amazing session for you guys, and it's on how to convince your employer to let you work remotely. So we had our first webinar series on remote work, and I took you through the benefits of remote work, what you stand to gain when you work remotely, the improved work-life balance. So now that you know what remote work is and how you can gain from it, how it improves the quality of your life, we have another session today on how to convince your manager to let you work remotely. Okay, so I wanted to let you know that this session is not just in English, we have an interpreter. And if you are a French speaker, you can switch to French commentary from the bottom of your screen. Just select interpretation and select French. So this is for French speakers. And if you are English speaker and you can hear what we are saying, so you can just continue with the normal webinar. So, but if you are a French speaker, we have live interpretation for you. Navigate to the bottom of your screen, find interpretation, and click on French. I hope that's clear for everyone. Okay, so allow me to share my screen so that I can start with today's session. Today, we are going to have a session on how to convince your employer to let you work remotely. These are tips that employers can use to convince their managers, their bosses, to let them work remotely. We've all seen that remote work is now the future of work. People can achieve the same level of productivity when they're working away from home, when they're working from home, just as they're working from the office. So if you feel that you're better off working from home and not having to commute to work every other day, you can approach your employer and ask them to let you work remotely. This is what this webinar today is all about. So just before I get started, I wanted to share a few reminders with the audience. And so if you are not speaking, if you are not raising an issue, please keep your microphone off. And also if you can have your camera on, but if you're in a position where it's not that convenient, there are things happening in the background, you can also turn off your camera and just listen in. If you have questions, type them in the chat box. Grasha is monitoring the chat, and if there's anything urgent, she will let me know and I will address them immediately. Also, if you have questions about anything that I'll be saying throughout the session, please use the chat box, and at the end of the presentation, I will address all those questions and comments. Okay. So otherwise, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with you, and I'm hoping we'll have a nice time. I just wanted to let you know that today's session is interactive. I have an activity for everyone in the audience that I'd ask you to participate. I'll be asking you a question, and I'll be waiting for you to give responses so that we can make this session interactive. Remember, we're here to learn from each other. And so when we get to the discussion point and you have something that you'd want to say, use the chat box, feel free to raise your hand and we will give you an opportunity to make your contributions. Okay, so let me just break down what we will go through today. Today's webinar has two parts. So the first part will focus on convincing employers how employees can convince employers to let them work remotely. So during the first part, we'll go through the importance of remote work, the challenges of convincing employers. It's not smooth sailing. Employers have their own reservations about remote work. So we'll talk about these challenges and the strategies. What will you do to convince your employer to allow you to work remotely? The second part of this webinar is on how employers and entrepreneurs can support their remote workers. So if you want to work remotely, You want your employer to support you to do your work well. So how can they support you better? It feels like this session is supposed to be for entrepreneurs, but as an employee, you need to know how best you're supposed to be supported so that you can guide this employer you're working with who is not that much convinced about remote work to show them on how best they can support you. Okay, so just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Melvin Muna. I'm from Kenya, and I'm a remote work specialist and consultant. I have worked remotely for the last 7 years. I've performed different roles with international organizations in the US, in the UK, in Ireland, in India, in Cambodia. And I have performed roles such as digital marketing, SEO specialist, an agribusiness consultant, as a speech writer. And all these jobs I've done them when I'm in my home here in Kenya. I'm passionate about Africa and its youth. And I believe that remote work can be an amazing tool of unlocking the potential within the continent, especially among the young people. So I have seen firsthand the benefits of remote work. This includes access to new job opportunities. I never thought I could be a speechwriter, but right now I can write for you a very nice speech. This is something that I not thought I'd be doing, but because I've been exposed to the good things that come to you when you work remotely, this is an opportunity that I've been able to do. So remote work can be a game changer, especially right now where we have a very thriving and growing youthful population here in Africa. Our economies are not growing that fast to accommodate all these young people. So young people need to look elsewhere for jobs. Remote work presents an incredible opportunity for the young people to engage themselves, to earn an income, build their skills, and lead decent lives. Okay, so let's get straight into the part one of our webinar on strategies for convincing employers. Okay, so more and more people are discovering the joys of working from home. You too can also join this revolution. So how can you make a case? Let's say you're working in an office. You have to go to work every other day. How can you make a case for flexible working? Remote work is known to increase and improve the productivity of employees. It also makes them more satisfied in their lives because they have more time to spend with their family. They have more time. They're not spending so much time commuting, and it's quite stressful actually having to commute to work every day. So they're less stressed and lead better lives. So how do you convince your boss if you work in an office, if you have to go to work every day? What arguments will you use to increase your chances of getting the remote work of your dreams, for getting the chance to work flexibly, maybe to work on your own hours, because that's what you can do when you're working remotely. So we'll talk about these strategies that you can use to convince your boss to let you work from home. But before we get to the strategies I'll work, this is the activity that I have for you, and it's an open discussion. So if you have something to say, if you have a contribution to make on this issue, feel free to use the chat box, write your comments, and I will read the responses out. So how do you shoot your shot in a professional setting? How to shoot your shot in a professional setting to convince your employer to let you work remotely? How should you approach your, should you go with threats? Should you go with facts? Should you go with research that you've done? How do you think you can go about approaching your employer and convincing them to let you work remotely? So this is an open discussion. It's open for everyone in the audience. So feel free to use the chat and give your comments. I'll be monitoring the chat. Gracia will also be monitoring the chat, and I will be reading out your comments once you share them. how to shoot your shot in a professional setting. Anyone in the audience with a comment? There are no right or wrong answers. We're here to learn from each other. So if you feel you have something to say, feel free and make your comment, please. Let me stop sharing so that I can see the chat. Okay, so please forgive me if I butcher your name. Please forgive me. We have, I realize that name. So let me just say the second name. Koso says, I'll be straight and explain why I think it's important for me to work from home. That's very nice, and it's one of the things that you need to do. You need to be upfront and tell your employer why you feel it's important for you to work from home. Okay, Gracia says, I will ideally go with the facts, explain why I think it's beneficial for me to work from home. That's nice. You need to show your boss how it benefits the organization for you to work remotely. It could be you are more productive when you're at home because you're able to manage your time well. Let's say you're at your best early in the morning from around 5 to around 8. But in the normal settings, you're supposed to get to work by 8. So by 8, you're not at the best. So by telling them why it's beneficial for the organization for you to work from home, that is one way to go about this. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Gracia. Okay, so Zainab say, I'll prepare for it and give all the arguments to convince him. Yes, prepare for this meeting. Find arguments to convince your boss why you need to work from home or why it's good for you and for the organization. Remember that it may be good for you, but is it actually good for the organization to have the workers working remotely? You need to also show the organization that it's actually to their benefit to have you working from home. Stanley says, I'll be concise in comparing and contrasting the good characteristics of working from home. Yes, Stanley, thank you so much for sharing. You need to compare why you are more effective working from home than in the office. You can say that in the office, I can concentrate better at home because it's silent, because once the other people in my home can go to work, I can have the house to myself and I can concentrate. You can say I'm not distracted as much at home because I have the house to myself. Probably you live alone. You can also say that I'm able to accomplish work much faster because you are an independent worker. Thank you so much, Stanley, and everyone else who has contributed to this discussion. So all what you have said are concrete ways to approach this issue, how to shoot your shot in a professional setting. Remember, this is professional. So in whatever you are doing, you need to still understand that this is your boss. This is the person who can put you out of work, actually. So you need to ensure that you're approaching this situation calmly. You are not going there with emotions, but with facts, and weighing heavily on how this whole arrangement benefits the organization. Thank you so much for all those answers. So let's proceed. So the importance of remote work in today's world. I'll share importances. In the earlier sessions, I discussed the importance of remote work for employees. I also talked about the importance of remote work for employers. But since we are all about convincing employers to let us work from home, what benefits do the employers and the company stand to gain? One is increased productivity for the workers. You can work more hours at home because you don't commute. You're also fresher because you don't have to commute back and forth. You're not, you get up, get ready, and you're ready to get started with your work. So the productivity is something that would appeal to your employers and the organizations you're working for. One is the lower overhead cost. it's cheaper for an organization to have a remote work base than an in-office one, because one, there's less cost incurred for rent because you don't need a big space. Also supplies, you don't have to pay so much for office supplies like furniture. So those overhead costs are reduced. We also have improved employee retention. Employees are more attracted to organizations that allow them the flexibility to work remotely. So if an employer is against remote work, they risk losing their best employees, okay? So then we have reduced absenteeism, because if I'm not able to make it to work on time, let's say I'm supposed to report at 8, which is for an in-office setting. If I'm not able to get to work by this time, I might find an excuse and say that I'm sick and not come to the office that day. But if I'm working remotely, even if I'm not able to start my work at 8, I can start later and make up for that lost time in my own time. Yeah, so you don't have to be absent for the whole day when you're working remotely. There's also access to a larger talent pool. Organizations that take remote workers can take remote workers from everywhere. They're not limited to the employees or workers within their region. They can hire from everywhere. So this increases their talent pool. Okay, so now that we know the benefits that companies can gain from having their workers work remotely, what are the reasons why organizations are still scared of this form of work? Because it's not that common. It's not a common way of working. Most companies want their workers to check into the office. So what are some of the reasons why companies are scared of remote work? So despite all the benefits of remote work, some companies and CEOs like Elon Musk still don't allow their employees to work remotely. It's true. Elon is in fact one of the biggest advocate of in-office work. And he said, he was quoted saying that anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, and I mean minimum of 40 hours per week, or depart Tesla. This was not a warning. This actually happened. Those people who are not comfortable with returning back to their office after COVID forced people to work from home, they were actually fired. Elon is a big advocate of working in the office, does not support remote work, and as big as he is, is the richest person in the world, running organizations that are making millions of dollars yearly. They don't want the employees working remotely. So you can imagine, if Elon is against remote work, as exposed as he is, what about the normal bosses that we have in our companies? They're obviously scared of it. So here are the reasons why companies are scared of remote work. One is they want control over their employees. Companies are against remote work because managers to have control over the people that are physically near them. It's difficult to control people who are not in the same room as you. That's why sometimes managers and companies are against remote work. They want to control people, and they feel it's easier to control them when they're in the same room or physically near them. Another reason companies are scared of remote work is because most feel that one-on-ones are difficult to do. So one-on-one meetings are very important. They are very important for organizations to succeed. Managers need one-on-one meetings to share updates with the employees, they need these meetings to provide tools that the employees need to succeed. But when an employee is working remotely, some believe that it's difficult to have these meetings. And some say that rent still has to be paid. Even if I allow you to work remotely, I still have to pay for the office building. This is the thinking of some managers, and it's one of the reasons why they're not supporting remote work. Another thing that is scaring companies when it comes to remote work is team collaboration challenges. Some managers say that it's difficult for team members to communicate and collaborate when they're in different time zones. Actually, it is, and it takes a lot of commitment to stay in touch with your colleagues who are in different time zones. So this is one of the things that makes companies scared of remote work. Okay, another reason is some believe that productivity goes down in remote work. This can happen sometimes when you are at home and you're not fully aware of what you're doing, or you're not really engaged in your work. It can be difficult to stay concentrated and maintain your productivity because there are too many distractions. But as a remote worker, you need to manage your space, manage your time, so that you can retain the same levels of productivity that you had when you're working in an office, and maintain that level to when you're working at home. Another reason is some companies feel that remote work can be isolating, and we understand that some organizations, all organizations, socializing is important. Employees need to come together to bond so that they can meet to discuss ways to improve the organization. So some managers, some companies feel that remote work isolates the employees, and that's why some are actually against this form of work. Yeah, so those are the reasons, some of the reasons why employers are scared of remote work and are against their workers working remotely. So let's move to the challenges of convincing employers. So you've made up your mind you want to work remotely. You need to approach your employer and tell them to let you work remotely. What challenges are you likely to face? What challenges are likely to stand in the way as you try and convince your manager to allow you to work remote? So convincing employers to allow remote work can be challenging, especially in traditional or conservative work environments. So these are the challenges that you might face as you try to persuade your employer to let you work remotely. One is a lack of trust. So you've approached your manager and you want them to let you work remotely. Your manager may be hesitant to allow remote work because they fear a lack of productivity, accountability, and trustworthiness. So in the office, when you get to the office, your manager knows that I can watch over you to do your job. I can ensure you accomplish your goals, your objectives for the day before you head back home. But can they trust you to maintain that level of productivity when you're not being supervised? There are some people who like to be supervised. I'm sorry to say so, but there are people who only work when someone is watching over them. So if you are one of these people, your employer may not trust you to maintain the same level of productivity when you're alone. So this lack of trust is a challenge that you are likely to encounter, especially if you have not been performing to the desired standards in your normal work. There's also communication barriers. Communication is very essential for remote work success, but it's also a challenge. Employers may worry that there will be breakdowns in communications, which will lead to confusion, mistakes, and missed opportunities. So when you're working remotely, you'll get your instructions through email, You'll get instructions through Slack or other collaborative platforms. But sometimes there's a breakdown in this communication. Sometimes messages are not sent. Sometimes there's misunderstandings and you don't get the chance to clarify things. So this can bring mistakes and a lot of missed opportunities, especially for on-demand work or pressure situations where that need people to react and act quickly. So another challenge you might encounter is technical challenges. Remote work requires reliable technology for it to succeed. I mentioned this in my first session in the first webinar series, that for remote work to success, technology plays a big role. You need high-speed internet, secure private networks for private team communications. So employers may be concerned that the employee who wants to work remotely may not have the costs, may not have the money and the capacity to set up and maintain the systems. It's easy to do this in the office because a technical person can be assigned the role of fixing up everyone's communication. But you're working from home, you're working from a different time zone. How will they reach you so that they can fix some of these technical issues when they arise? That's a challenge you're likely to encounter when trying to convince your employer to let you work remotely. We also have cultural resistance. Some organizations have a strong culture of in-person work. Some organizations believe and they've built a culture where success happens when everyone is in the same room, in the same place, collaborating, talking. So when you raise and when you make an inquiry to work remotely in an organization such as this, the organization may feel that you're trying to do away with their culture, their way of doing things. And it might be difficult for you to actually convince your employer in this case because they believe that all the good work is done in office, in person. So cultural resistance is another thing that you're likely to face in your quest to convince your employer to let you work remotely. Another one is legal and regulatory concerns. Some industries can be, let's say you are working as an accountant and for you to work remotely, you need access to client files. How sure is the organization that you are not going to expose these files to competitors, to other people? You know, sometimes people are doing illegal things. You could be an accountant and discover that so-and-so has been avoiding taxes, and the client privilege requires that you shouldn't disclose this information to anyone else, but you're working remotely, you have access to all this data. You might be tempted to you might talk to someone, and this information may leak. So regulatory concerns might force the employer to deny employees who want to work remotely this opportunity. So let me just briefly go through these challenges. One is a lack of trust. Two is communication barriers. So we have technical challenges to do with IT, cultural resistance, and legal and regulatory concerns. These are the challenges we're likely to face. So with these challenges in mind, how do you convince your employer to let you work remotely? I had to share some of these challenges and reasons why employers are against remote work so that you can prepare yourself. You can prepare yourself for this stage where when you get there, because they'll raise all these issues. You won't just walk in to your manager's office, tell them I want to work remotely, and they'll let you. They'll ask you, will you be as productive as you are in the office? They'll ask you about client files. Will you expose client files to unwarranted people? They'll also raise the issue of the cultural of the office culture, where people work better. They believe the good things happen when people are in the same building. So they'll raise all these issues. So with all that in mind, what strategies can you use to convince your employers to let you work remotely? So I'll share 8 suggestions. And if you are taking notes, this is where you want to be taking notes, because this is it. This is what you need to do to get the remote work that you desire, to increase your chances of convincing your boss to let you work remotely. First thing is to make a solid business case. You shared in the open discussion, I think Gracia mentioned that she will tell the boss what makes remote work beneficial, not just for herself, but for also the organization. So here this is how you make a solid case. Make a solid case that demonstrates the benefits of remote work for both you and the company. Remember, in this case, it's not just about you. Okay, you want to work remotely to improve the quality of your life, but what's in it for the organization you're working for? So make a solid case, highlighting the benefits, not just for yourself, but also for the company. You can highlight the cost savings that the organization can make when you are not working in the office. You can highlight the productivity gains that will accrue because you have more time to work and because you are not commuting and you're not stressed. You can also talk about how satisfied you will be and say that when you're satisfied, you perform better. And this will result in more benefits for the organization that you're working for. So make sure to provide data and research to support your arguments. So if you're talking about productivity gains, is there data that shows that people who work remotely are more productive? Okay, so if you are saying you'll be more satisfied as an employee when you work remotely, is there data and research to show this? Lucky for you, there's this data. And I have a few case studies that I can share with you. So if you need that information, please reach out to me and I will share. I think I have three researches and case studies on how remote work is actually beneficial, not just for you, but also for the organization you're working for. Yeah, so you can support your arguments with case studies of successful remote work, arguments, or trends that show the growing popularity of remote work. Make sure your case is solid. If you have to make a presentation, please do. If you have to print documents of the case studies you've come across, do it. Okay? So don't hold back. The second thing you need to do to convince your boss to let you work remotely is to show your track record. You need to demonstrate your reliability and ability to work remotely by highlighting previous successful remote work experiences or instances where you've been able to work independently and meet deadlines. You want the chance to work remotely unsupervised. How reliable are you that you will still be able to meet your goals, your objectives, and complete your assignments when no one is watching over you? So if you've done this before, you've been able to work remotely. Maybe there's a time you're traveling and you're not able to come into work, and you are able to do your work as expected of you and on time. Please show that to your boss. And if you've not had the chance to work remotely before, but you've been in situations where you've worked independently and been able to meet deadlines, this will be a good way to show that you can still meet the company expectations when you are allowed to work remotely. Remember, remote work will be independent. You'll be working on your own. No one to check if you've completed your assignments. So if you've been in a situation where you did some independent work and did it well, meeting all the deadlines, please use that to show that you can work remotely properly. You also need to address employer concerns. So I've highlighted a few concerns that employers might have. So based on where you're working from, try and see which concern that my boss is likely to have, and address them well. So if your employer is worried about productivity, you need to show them that there's a time you worked remotely and your productivity did not go down. If they're worried about communication, you need to show them that you have the tools and technologies to stay connected with your team members and collaborate effectively. Yeah, so they'll have these concerns, and you need to be in a position to show how they're not concerns, like they're just worries, and given the chance, they will not be a problem. If you're not able to do this, I'm sorry, but you'll not get the chance to work remotely. Another thing you can do is to suggest a trial period. If you work in a conservative work environment, remote work is not something that's common where you work, you need to suggest a trial period. Ask your manager to let you work remotely. Let's say for some time, it could be a week, and let them gauge your performance. It doesn't have to be a full remote role. Either you can say, like, I'll work for a few hours remotely and maybe check in the office at a certain time. Like, I don't have to come in at 8, I can come in at 12, but from 8 to 12, I'll be working remotely, and you need to show that you can still meet your deliverables. So it will not be straightforward, let me not lie to you. And for you to convince your employer that you have what it takes to work remotely, a trial period will help. It will help the manager and the boss assess if you're still able to meet your employee duties. So this will give you and the employer a chance to see how remote work, it will also give you the chance to see how remote work benefits both of you without having to commit to a long-term arrangement. So start a trial period, let's say for a week or a few or 2 weeks, and gauge your performance as you work from home. We also have planning. Present a plan. It's very important to share a plan of how you will work remotely. Sometimes the sticking point for your manager is the lack of a policy to support your desire for remote work. Remember that organizations, they're always designed to ensure that employees are doing their best. But if you're suggesting to work remotely and your boss feels like that you may not have, let's say, the resources or the tools to collaborate effectively with your workers because the organization doesn't have a policy on remote work, so they have not set aside resources to support remote workers. So share a plan on how you are going to effectively collaborate with your colleagues when you're working remotely. So present a plan. You can come up with a copy. You can get not a copy, with a policy on remote work from other organizations to make it easy for your boss to understand how your remote arrangement will work. Yeah, so don't just go and say, I want to work remotely. The boss will ask you, how will you succeed in your job? So this is the point, you need to present this plan. Okay. Yeah, so you can research other organizations that are doing remote work, and you can pick a few points and share them with your boss. And you also need to be flexible. Remember that ambushing your boss with the demand to work remotely, it could be the organization is facing some challenges and they need all the workers in the office. So if it's actually important for you to work remotely, you need to be flexible. So be willing to negotiate on details like work hours, communication methods, and deliverables. This will help you find a remote work arrangement that works for both you and your employer. So don't say that I'm working remotely full-time. This is what I want and I'm not taking anything other than that. Be flexible. You can say I'll be working remotely, let's say 3 days in a week. If that's what you want, then slowly once you prove that you can still do your work well, this can translate into a full-time remote role. But flexibility is key. You can negotiate on work hours, communication methods, and deliverables. So you can say that this is what I'll be delivering at this time. These are my expectations before, but right now I want to show that I'm more productive, so I'll be able to, my deliverables, can you raise them? It's a challenge, but if you're able to do that, it becomes easy to convince your manager or your boss to let you work remotely. Next, we have, you need to emphasize the business value. You need to show the business value of you working remotely. And here I want to emphasize on the need to show how productive, not just how productive you are, but you need to be more productive at home than you are in the office. If there is no positive change, your request may not be approved, because if I'm letting you working remotely, what am I getting in return? What is the organization getting in return? Emphasize the business value. Okay, so in as much as you want to work remotely, not that it's not about you, but what adds the highest value to the business. So collect data related to your work performance. Show your boss that when I work from home, I can achieve this. When I'm working in the office, this is what I'm able to achieve. If you are more productive at home, then it shows the value that the business is getting. And this becomes easy for the boss to approve your request for remote work. And lastly, appeal to their human side. Sometimes all these statistics, research, data may not help, but reach out to your boss, reach out to your employer, not as your boss, but as a human, as a friend. It could be you're going through some tough time and you need to be at home, but you still want to be able to work. Tell your boss that I'm having a tough moment at the moment right now, and I don't want to take a break from work. I want to be able to continue working because I love the job that I'm doing. So give me the opportunity to work from home. Appeal to their human side. Tell them what you stand to gain when you're working from home. Perhaps, let's say you're having trouble in your marriage, and you're having trouble in your marriage because you are always at work. You can tell your boss that the flexibility gives you more time to spend time with your family, spend time with your kids. They will listen to you, because we are all human at the end of the day. We go to work, but at the end of the day, we are human. So make a human argument if you have to, and it might help you land that remote work that you desire. So let me just do a brief recap of the strategies that you can use to convince your employer to let you work remotely. One is to make a solid business case, highlight the benefits of remote work for yourself and the organization, show your track record, demonstrate your ability to work remotely and achieve your goals, show that you can work independently and still be able to meet deadlines, address any concerns the employer may have and how you will work around them to ensure you are still able to meet your deliverables. Then suggest a trial period. Ask your employer to let you work remotely for a few days, could be a week, could be 2 weeks. And during this time, let them gauge your performance and also let them see the benefits that you bring to the organization as a remote worker. You also need to present a plan, come up with policies that the organization can adopt to support you to work remotely. Then be flexible, be willing to negotiate on work hours, communication methods, and deliverables. You also need to emphasize the value the business gains from you working remotely. And here you need to use quantitative data of you working from home and you working remotely. Also, lastly, appeal to their human side. Tell them what you stand to gain when you work remotely, and this might help you. The human argument may help you get your request approved. Okay, so now we are into the second part of this webinar, which is supporting remote workers as an employer or an entrepreneur. So let's say you get the chance to work remotely. How would you wish to be supported as a remote worker? because at the end of the day, you still need to, the organization is not just dumping you to your home. The organization you're working for still needs to be able to support you as a remote worker. So how are you going to guide them on how best they can support you? Okay, so as remote work continues to become prevalent, it's essential for employers and entrepreneurs to recognize the need to support remote employees. Remote employees face unique challenges such as isolation, communication barriers, and difficulty in establishing a work-life balance. Sometimes it's not easy to separate your work and your life because you could be working throughout the day. Sometimes it's difficult to make that transition from work to relaxation because you work in the same room, you work in the same place where you are supposed to relax, where you're supposed to be interacting with the kids. So difficulty establishing a work-life balance. These challenges can lead to burnout and decreased productivity, but your employer should support you to avoid all these challenges and barriers. So how best an employer is supposed to support the remote workers? One, they need to foster team building. They should host virtual team building activities, virtual tea breaks or coffee breaks, and meetings to encourage the team members to bond and to collaborate. So the organization can pair you with a buddy so that you can be chatting with, you can be collaborating on projects and also just catching up, and so that you can talk and avoid feeling isolated. Yeah, so your employer should ensure that these meetings are regular. Just, you don't need to be meeting for work. Have a Zoom call, but just catch up on how you're doing, what you're up to, the latest developments in your lives. Did you get married over the weekend? Did you have a kid? Yeah, just simple talk, nothing work related. It helps people bond. Your employer should also provide training and development opportunities. Okay, they shouldn't just let you find ways to improve your work output. Your employer should find ways to train you, to develop your skills. This can be through virtual training. They should pay for the remote workers to attend webinars. They should give you access to courses that improve your skills. So they need to offer training opportunities to their workers even when they're not in the office. So the employers are also supposed to encourage a healthy work-life balance. It's easy to get consumed in your work when you're working remotely. I've experienced this. Sometimes you work throughout the day, you wake up, you get to your laptop, and the time you put that laptop down, it's 9 p.m. So your employer should encourage you to take breaks so you can have regular meetings where they guide you on how best to maintain a healthy work-life balance. They don't need to do it themselves. They can have maybe someone else come and do it, someone to support your mental health, someone to talk to. Let's say you are alone, you feel isolated. Can you talk to someone? Yeah. And also they also need to ensure that your schedules are flexible so that you can work when you feel at your best. Okay. They shouldn't say that you need to be here, you need to check in at work at 8 and leave at 5. It could be you're not even in the same time zone. So 8 p.m. for your boss is too early in the morning for you. So they need to give you a flexible schedule so that you can work when you're feeling at your level best. Also, your manager needs to establish clear communication channels. Okay. When you have an issue as a remote worker, who do you reach out to? Who do you get in touch if you need support on a project? Let's say you need resources to accomplish a certain task. How will you ensure you are funded to do the job that you need to do? Okay, so the channels of communication should be clear so that when you are having troubles, who to reach out to. They also need to set expectations and guidelines. Remote work is not just about letting remote employees do what they want to do. Okay, there need to be expectations. There need to be guidelines on work hours. Your employer can tell you, like, when you signed your contract, you are supposed to work 8 hours in a day. But now that you're working remotely, these 8 hours, they don't have to be from 9 to 5 from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening. You can find a way to spread out your work hours, but still meet your obligations, your work obligations, and be within and provide the organization with the amount of hours that you signed for in your contract. So there are guidelines on even communication methods. How should you reach out to your colleagues? How should you reach out to your manager? How should you reach out to clients? And deliverables that you need they will use to gauge if you are working well or not. Okay, so your managers will set guidelines, and as a remote worker, you need to make sure you are there to the guidelines and meet the expectations. They also need to provide the employees with the equipment and the tools they need to perform their job. Just because you're working remotely doesn't mean that it's on you to get all this equipment that you need. Let's say internet supply, a laptop, let's say you need specific software to perform a certain job. Your employer should provide you with all these tools. Okay, so if they need to give you a stipend for internet and phone bills, they need to make sure this stipend arrives on time so that you can perform your job as expected. So that's how an employer can support their remote employees. Let me just go through it briefly. So they need to encourage team building, provide you with opportunities to bond with your colleagues to ensure you're not feeling isolated. They should also offer training and development opportunities through virtual training and online courses and webinars. They also need to encourage the employees to adopt a healthy work-life balance to ensure the employees are not overworking, and they're also supported mentally to achieve their work deliverables. They also need to ensure and establish clear communication channels and set work guidelines and expectations. As a remote worker, you should know what's expected of you by the organization, and these guidelines, if there is any change, they need to be communicated. They need to be communicated to you. Lastly, they need to provide you with the necessary tools and equipment to do your job. So if there's a specific software that you need to accomplish your tasks, the boss should ensure that software is paid for, and they should also give you a stipend probably so that you can pay for internet and phone bills so that you can be connected to your team. Okay, so unlock your freedom to work anywhere and design the ideal lifestyle with remote work. How do you achieve this? By convincing your employer to let you work remotely, and once they do, they need to ensure they're supporting you well to meet and achieve all that is expected of you by providing you with all the things that you need, and also supporting you to ensure you're not feeling isolated. That's how you unlock the freedom to work everywhere, to work anywhere, work from anywhere, and achieve the remote lifestyle that you dream of. So to succeed as a remote worker, there are a few things that you need. One is self-management and social awareness. Remember, you won't have someone to watch over you when you're working remotely. So you need to be able to manage yourself well. So you need to manage your time well. And this comes under self-management and also social awareness. So when you are interacting with others remotely, you may feel that they cannot see you. So you need to be socially aware and not think that just because you're remotely, you can do whatever you want and get away with it. You still need to understand how to manage yourself. And this course It's a Baobab course. So it's on emotional intelligence, self-management, and awareness. The link for this course, I'll ask Gracia to please share the links to these courses maybe a bit later, but this is a course that I'd recommend that for you to take so that you can better manage yourself when you're working remotely. So it's emotional intelligence, it's on self-management and social awareness. So log into Baobab. If you're not registered, please go ahead and register. It's a simple process. Once you log in into the Baobab platform, you can search this course. Please take it. It doesn't take so much, and I think you need around like 2 hours to complete the course. So please take this course, and the link will be shared with you. Another course that I'd like to recommend to you is an introduction to emotional intelligence, and specifically on building a sense of self. A sense of self is very important, especially when you'll not be able to achieve your goals if you don't understand who you are. So if you want to work remotely, you need to be able to express yourself clearly, elegantly, so that you can get whatever you are asking from your boss. So you need not to be intimidated. You need not to feel like you're not worth it. You are worth of everything that this world has to offer. So building a sense of self will make you more confident, and it make it easy for you to go after your goals and accomplish them. So take this course on Baobab also. The link will be shared with you. It's not a long course. So once you're there, it's self-paced, you can take it at your own pace, and it will guide you on how to build your emotional intelligence, specifically your sense of self. So thank you so much for being here. That's what I have for you. I hope you had an amazing time. And at this moment, I'd like to tell you about our remote opportunities challenge. So this webinar is not just any other webinar. So we have a challenge, a remote work challenge, where the winner of the challenge gets a unique opportunity to be mentored by myself on how to excel in remote work. We'll have 4 sessions with you if you win. And this will I will guide you, I will take you through, I will hold your hand and help you thrive as a remote worker. So part of the challenge is to select the winners. We also asked you to share the invite to this webinar. I hope you'll do that for the next time. But now that you're here, we have a quiz, and the quiz is on the things that we've covered in this webinar. So it's just about remote work, the things we've covered today. It's a simple quiz, and we have a quiz in English and we have a quiz in French. So we will start with the English quiz. So if you are comfortable taking the quiz in English, please take it in English. If you're comfortable taking the quiz in French, you have to wait for the English quiz to be over. Then after that, we will proceed to the French quiz, and you'll take your quiz from there, okay? So we have a quiz, it's in English, it's also been translated to French. So those who are comfortable with English will take their quiz in English. Then those who are comfortable in French will take their quiz in French. So to access your quiz, just click on the More button, and you can, on the poll/quiz, it's there. Go ahead and continue and take the quiz. So here is the quiz, and let's discuss through this quiz. So the first question was, what is the first step? What is the first step you should take before asking your employer for remote work? So is it to draft a letter of resignation? Is it to research your employer's policies on remote work? Or to start working remotely without approval, or none of the above? So the correct answer was to research your employer's policies on remote work. What do they have about remote work at the moment? If they don't have any policy on remote work, then you need to help them come up with one, provide them with a plan, as we talked about in the webinar. I can see 6 of you who attempted this question got it right. Okay, congratulations. So the second question was, which of the following is not a common benefit of remote work? So our options were increased productivity, improved work-life balance, increased face-to-face communication, reduced commuting costs. So the answer is C. Increased face-to-face communication is not a benefit of remote work. In fact, there's less of that. Yeah, so 6 out of 6 got that one right. You can see people are paying attention. Okay, so when proposing remote work to your employer, what is a key element to include in your pitch? Remember, I asked you how to shoot your shot. So which elements should you include in your pitch? A detailed plan for staying productive and meeting deadlines, a request for a rise or promotion, a threat to quit if remote work is not granted, none of the above. So the correct answer is a detailed plan for staying productive and meeting deadlines. You need to show how you're going to meet your deadlines when working remotely. 6 out of 6 got that question. So what is one strategy you can use to convince your employer to let you work remotely? Which strategy? Offer to work longer hours to make up for the lack of face-to-face interaction, highlight the potential cost savings for the company, promise to work from the office at least once a week, none of the above. So which is a strategy that you can use to convince your employer? In this case, it's B, highlight the potential savings, cost savings for the company. So here you need to make the business case, show business value, how the company is going to benefit from you working remotely. The cost savings, you can talk about reduced overhead costs. You can talk about how you're more productive, that's able to deliver more for the organization. That's how you show cost savings the company will make. So the question is B, 5 of you out of 6 got that correct. So what is a common concerns that employers have, common concern about remote work? We talked about concerns in this presentation. So options were decreased employee satisfaction, reduced collaboration among team members, increased employee turnover, or none of the above. So the right answer is reduced collaboration among team members. This is a concern that employers have about remote work. So 5 out of you got that one right. One person said increased employee turnover, so that is not a concern. So thank you so much for, no, there's still one more question. How can you address the concern of decreased collaboration when proposing remote work to your employer? How can you address collaboration issues? So our options were suggest using communication tools like Slack and Zoom to stay connected, offer to come into the office for meetings and team events, hire a project manager to oversee remote work communication, none of the above. So to address the challenge of the concern of decreased collaboration, you can suggest using communication tools like Slack and Zoom to stay connected. Yes, I can see one person said offer to come into the office for meetings and team events. No, you're going to work remotely. The meetings and events need to be done remotely. That's the essence of remote work. So to address this concern, tell them that you'll be using tools to stay connected with the employees. So thank you for participating. And this was so competitive. I think we'll have several people who got everything right. So those are the winners for today's quiz. And remember that the winner of the Remote Opportunities Challenge will be evaluated based on your attendance, will also be evaluated based on how you perform on your quizzes and your participation and score during this session. So good job to everyone who participated in the quiz. Good job to everyone who scored everything. Those who missed 1 or 2, I hope you've learned where you went wrong, and we'll make up for that in the next quiz, during our next webinar. So thank you so much for taking part in the quiz. I just want to say that, okay, so there's no one took the French quiz. No one took the French quiz, so I don't have results for that. Yes. So we are evaluating we have your information on those who participated, and to know the winner of the Remote Opportunities Challenge will be revealed on our 4th webinar. This is the first. We have 3 more to go, and on the 4th one, we will reveal who the winner is. For the opportunity to get a one-on-one mentorship on remote work from myself, we'll have 4 sessions. We will talk, we will discuss anything you have an issue with. I will handle and deal and help you deal with that. So I also want to tell you about our upcoming webinar. It is in 3 weeks' time. So be on the lookout for advertisements on that. This session is not just in English, so don't feel afraid to join if you are a French speaker. We have live translation, and share with your friends, please. Share with your friends. There's so much information here that can really help young Africans like yourself become prosperous in the field and the future of work. So when you see our communications, I will be sharing this on my LinkedIn. If you need to connect with me, please connect with me. Just search Melvin Muna. Let's connect and share. Be on the lookout for advertisements on the upcoming webinar. So for this challenge, we'll have only one winner. So it's who does well throughout the 4 sessions. So you want to be participating, you want to be answering the quizzes and getting everything right. It will affect how we determine the winner of the challenge. We also check, please share. The person who invites the most people over will also be considered when we're making the final decision. So please share this with your friends. Share our invites for upcoming webinars. So if you feel you've not performed your best for this webinar, there are 3 more to come. Please, the upcoming webinars are so amazing. We'll be doing how to build your CV, how to create a CV, a winning CV. CV is very important. Okay, so our upcoming webinars are very important. How to write a cover letter, how to build your LinkedIn profile. Those are the sessions that are coming up, and I believe they can benefit each and every one of you. So if you have any questions, please you can raise your hand or you can write in the chat box. Okay, so just wanted to raise that we also consider engagements when determining the winner of the challenge. So if you want to be considered as a winner, you can engage through questions, through comments. I appreciated how you showed up during the open discussion. We had some nice input from you guys, and that is encouraging. So please, if you need to make an issue, make a comment, please feel free to ask in the chat or raise your hand and speak. Yeah, Ibrahim, please unmute and ask your question or comment.
All right. Good afternoon to you. That was a wonderful presentation. I really learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
I do not have a question, but I just realized that if I had this session maybe a year ago, I could have helped some of my friends, because they are software engineers, 3 of them work in a very big organization here in Ghana. And when they were trying to go remote, they had 3 different meetings with the CEO and the team, the leadership. But they never agreed for these guys to go remote. So they therefore resigned. 3 of them resigned on the same day. And these are guys who are very solid guys, good programmers, but they just had to leave the company because the management didn't want them to work remotely. And Accra is, traffic, going to work and going back home. But the guys telling that they can be at home and still deliver. But the management said, no, we always need you in the office. And they couldn't agree to a consensus. So the guys resigned. If I had had this session, I could have had a way of speaking to them, possibly using your presentation to let them, come up with a very solid, foundation that they can stand on to convince the management so that there could be mutual agreement. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. That's so nice. Actually, but with this talk of remote work, in as much as we are empowering the employees, the young Africans, there also needs to be a similar session for employers. Employers also need to be sensitized on the advantages of remote work. Sometimes
that's true.
Yeah. So I feel the organization was a conservative one, afraid that they will lose productivity when the employees work remotely. So they really didn't know that productivity is not affected by where you are. It's affected by what you're doing and how you manage yourself. So I'm so sorry that your friends had to lose their job, but I believe it's the loss for the organization. If you say that they're that good, I'm sure they found probably better opportunities.
Oh yes, currently they work for a US company remotely, and they are paid even better.
They are paid in dollars.
Yeah, they are paid in dollars.
That's so nice. I'm so happy. Yeah, so the employers also miss out. Okay, so Koso is asking how to react if the employee wants to lower the income because of the flexibility of remote work. So I want to assume that maybe your employer was giving you some allowance, probably transport allowance for you to get to the office. If that's the case, then they can take that away from your salary as you negotiate for remote work engagement. But if that's not the case, then I don't think they're justified in asking you to lower your income. So when they ask you to do that, please respectfully tell them that times are hard, the economy is not friendly to anyone, and you need every single cent that you're getting from the organization. So they need to keep you on the same terms. Remember that you need to show how the business ends, that by working remotely, the company is gaining more because I'll be more productive, I'll be less stressed and be able to meet my goals better than I used to before. So an organization that asks you to lower your salary because your income because you're working remotely, that organization really doesn't understand what they're saying. So they need to be empowered, to be trained, they need to be taught about the importance of remote work. The organization is actually going to make more money when you're working remotely. So they have no reason to ask you for you to decrease your income. So if that's the case, you need to show them that the organization is actually benefiting that you're working remotely. Show the productivity gains, the reduced costs for employee management, and how that translates to more profits for the business. So don't accept a lower income to work remotely. Tell them that they're making more money because you're away from home. And in fact, they need to give you something on top of that. So don't accept an income cut. Probably during your trial period, they will see the benefits they're gaining and this. So if they have this, they ask you to take an income cut, ask them that, let me do this trial period. So the organization will assess on their end how much they're gaining from that. And after that, let's say after 2 weeks or a month, then sit and have that discussion, and they will realize that they're not losing, they're gaining from you working remotely. And that concern and that requirement and ask to lower your income will be able to do away with it. Thank you so much, Koso, for your question. I wish you'd open up the mic and tell us how to pronounce your name, please. But it's okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Holis.
Holis.
Yes, or you can call me Chris also.
Holis Koso Chris. Thank you so much for telling me and teaching me how to pronounce your name. Where are you from?
I'm from Benin.
We are from Benin.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. We're glad you're here with us.
Thanks for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much. Any other question? Oh, okay. How to show people that you are working remotely and not be forgotten by everyone. So the representation of remote employee in the society. So we live, actually our societies are very conservative. In fact, people don't believe you're working if you're not going to the office. Like, so you're working from home, people think you are not doing any work. People think you're idling. So my answer to you is you don't need to concern yourself with what people think or don't think, because at the end of the day, people have their own opinions. People will make judgments. So just concentrate on doing your work. People will see the developments you're doing and they know, this guy is working. But also you need to make sure that as you're working remotely, please make sure it's official. Make sure you're not doing bad things. You're not scamming people, because police can get involved. So if you're working remotely, make sure you have a contract to show that I work for this organization. It's signed. This is how I get paid. This is how much I get paid. Because if you are, let's say you're earning remotely, you're earning money, you're earning dollars, and you're living a flashy life, but no one sees you go to the office. Our societies are conservative. They may raise issues. They may say maybe you are scamming people online, which is not the case. You are doing legitimate work. So you need to make sure that sort everything out, have contracts with the people you're working with, make sure they are legitimate, and so that in case of anything, you can prove, not to people, but let's say to authorities, that I'm doing genuine work. So don't be concerned about other people, how people think about you when you're working remotely. As long as you're making the money, that's good for you. But maybe let's say for your parents and your siblings who took you to school, your parents took you to school, and they expect to see you going to an office to work, you can explain to them that I don't actually need to be in an office to work. I've felt it. I work remotely, and sometimes my mom asks me when I'm going to get a job. Those questions are there. My friends get asked this question all the time. So just sit down with the people who matter, and in this case, your parents, your relatives, but parents mainly, and those close to you, and tell them that I don't have to be in an office to work. I work as an engineer, I work as a graphic designer, and I'm able to do this work from home using my laptop. Yeah, so find out who you really need to tell you're working well. That's the government and your parents, but the rest, don't concentrate so much about them, because they have opinions, and you may not be able to convince them that you're doing legitimate work online. Thank you so much for your question, Koso Raulis. So if you don't have any other question, I'd like to thank all of you for attending this webinar. It was nice to have you. It was nice to hear your opinions on the issues I've raised today, and I'm grateful to have you here. I want to ask you to be on the lookout for more opportunities like this. We have nice sessions coming up. Please join, please share with your friends. Let's all come here, let's meet, let's discuss, and let's work towards making Africa better for all of us.
You and I, we're breaking back.